Michigan heads to its third straight Big Ten title game, hoping to earn a third straight appearance in the college football playoff, but will have to get by a stingy Iowa defense. Alejandro, Zuniga, and David Eickholt are here to break down the game. Two of the best defensive units in the nation. Iowa allowing just over 12 points a game to opponents, and Michigan allowing just over 10 points a game. Offense, though, may be difficult to find here. The Hawkeyes were a legendary level of inefficient, ranking dead last in the country in total offense, but still winning 10 games. Now, obviously, the big storyline here, guys, is Jim Harbaugh's triumphant return to the sidelines. Michigan has won its last 3 games without him against its toughest competition. So, Alejandro, what does his return do for the Wolverines?
Yeah, it's crazy thinking back to it that Michigan has played 12 games this season, and in only half of them has Jim Harbaugh been on the sidelines. He has been suspended for 6 of 12 games this year. And if there's something that suspension has proven among Michigan fans, Michigan's team, and the administration, it's how much love there is for Jim Harbaugh in Ann Arbor right now. It's been very clear from the free Jim Harbaugh shirts to Sharon Moore crying post-game and dropping F-bombs and saying, "This was for you, Jim," that there's a lot of love for him. This is a program that has been built in his image over nearly the past decade. It is a program that has reached heights that Jim Harbaugh took them to, and it's going to be very meaningful to have him back on the sidelines. I think to J.J. McCarthy, a quarterback who will be facing a very stingy, like you said, Iowa defense, having a quarterback, a former quarterback in Jim Harbaugh there to help coach him up will be huge. And then for Sharon Moore to be able to step back, do what his job is, which is work the offensive line, work the offense, and be able to do just that instead of taking on many hats, which is what he's done for 3 of the past weeks, will be very important for Michigan against what will be a very solid defensive unit in Iowa.
Harbaugh won't be seeing his former quarterback, Cade McNamara, on the field, as McNamara won't be playing, but he is helping Iowa prepare for Michigan, and he's taking shots at his old team, too. He won't even refer to Michigan by its name, calling them that other school. So, David, what kind of advantage does McNamara bring in Iowa's prep here?
Yeah, so I think number one, America loves an underdog, unless it's the Iowa Hawkeyes, I think, at this point. But yeah, Cade McNamara has been all in on trying to help this team. He's been hanging out with the defensive players, trying to give them some insight about this Michigan offense. He's been hanging out with quarterback Deacon Hill. Cade McNamara is, quote, doing everything he possibly can to help out this Iowa team. And remember, Cade McNamara defeated Iowa back in 2021, and he admitted himself it was a bit awkward to rewatch that 2021 game, especially on the film. Several of Iowa's players also said the same thing. So Cade's been incredibly active in the quarterback room. He's been incredibly active in the defensive room. And I know he would absolutely die to be on that field to play against his old team, because as you mentioned, I don't think there's a lot of on record hate, but there's no doubt that when Cade McNamara got to Iowa, he dreamed of playing against his old team in Michigan in Indianapolis. So since he can't do that, I think he's going to do everything humanly possible to help out his new team.
Now, one of the biggest matchups in this game is the Michigan run game versus the Iowa run defense. Michigan's rush attempts per game have increased significantly under Sharon Moore, from 38 attempts per game to 43 attempts per game. But their yards per rush has decreased about half a yard during that time. Now they're up against Iowa, one of the best defenses in the nation against the run. Alejandro, how do you see this matchup going?
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see the first few series how it plays out, because as we all saw in that Ohio State game, one of Michigan's most talented players, one of the best guards in the country, Zach Zinter, went down with a bad leg injury. And that means reshuffling the offensive line, putting in Trente Jones at tackle, moving Carson Barnhart from tackle to guard. So how that unit meshes will be key. I do think Michigan has 2 of the best running backs in the country in Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. We saw how Michigan was able to move the ball, burn 7 minutes off the clock to help ice that game against Ohio State. And I do think a couple things. Number one, Iowa, if they play in that 2 deep shell, Michigan will be very content running the ball for 4 or 5 yards a gain. That is what they did at the end of the Penn State game. They ran the ball 32 straight times. They are not afraid to run it and keep running it if they are finding success. And of course, J.J. McCarthy, he has been banged up the last couple weeks. He is back at 100%, which is what was confirmed this week. If Michigan wants to open up the run game, they get J.J. McCarthy to the edge, and that will help the run game set up the pass and potentially score some touchdowns.
Yeah, there's no doubt that Iowa's number one priority is to slow down Blake Corum, who I think is the best running back in the country. Donovan Edwards has also been spectacular. But that's something that Iowa linebacker Jay Higgins absolutely loves. He has 141 tackles on the year, a potential All-American caliber linebacker. But Iowa needs to dominate the line of scrimmage. I mean, no Noah Shannon because he's been suspended due to the gambling investigation into Iowa all year. But Logan Lee, Aaron Graves, Y.A. Black, some big defensive tackles. And I'm curious if this, changes up the way Michigan's going to try to attack Iowa with, as Alejandro mentioned, Zinter is out. So I'm looking to see if Iowa is going to exploit that. But there's no doubt that Iowa is trying to limit explosive plays. They've only allowed 3 rushing touchdowns on the year. Iowa actually has only allowed 4 touchdowns in the last 6 games total. So Phil Parker's unit has been buzzing, but I'm keeping a close eye on Nick Jackson as well. The Virginia transfer has been outstanding, and Sebastian Castro, who might be the X factor on defense. There's no doubt that Iowa would love to have Cooper DeJean lock down half the field, but for Iowa to have its best chance to win, they need to slow down Corum as much as they can, slow down Edwards, and force J.J. McCarthy to become a pocket passer.
Now, Iowa opened this week as a 23-point underdog, so if it pulls off the upset, it would be the largest dog ever to win any conference championship game. David, what's the key to pulling it off here?
Yeah, so this might sound a little bit bizarre, but I'm keeping a very close eye on the scripted plays. If you go back to 2 years ago, Iowa moved the ball pretty efficiently on its first drive. They actually had a great chance at a touchdown. It was a missed trick play, a little bit overthrown the end zone. And then Caleb Shudak, Iowa's kicker, who had been bread and butter all season long, missed a chip shot field goal. And right when they missed that, I said, you know what? Michigan's going to find a way to win the game because Iowa looked rattled. So if Iowa's going to win this game, they need to keep it a low-scoring game. Brian Ferentz has to call the greatest game of his life, as he did back against Ohio State in 2017, USC in that 2019 bowl game. But I'm curious if Iowa's really going to let every trick out of the bag and take some risks. I think that's also a big key. So Iowa needs to get out there, whether it's a touchdown, whether it's a field goal. They need to move the ball early, punch Michigan in the mouth, and get any sort of confidence moving forward. Because if Michigan strikes first, let's just be real, this Iowa team is not built to play from behind.
Yeah, David, I fully agree with that. And that's why I think one of the keys for Michigan to win this game and to win it comfortably is to score first and take an early lead. If Michigan takes a 2-score lead in this game, I don't think anyone believes that Iowa has the offensive firepower to claw back into it. You think back to that 2021 game that you mentioned, Michigan went up 14-3. How did they do that? Well, they brought in their special package, which at the time was J.J. McCarthy in at quarterback. He was the backup at that time. That led to a Blake Corum touchdown. Then what do? They go with a halfback pass. They throw the ball out to Donovan Edwards. Donovan Edwards from the flat fires a ball downfield to Roman Wilson. All of a sudden, it's an 11-point game, and the game is over from there. If this becomes a field position game, if this becomes an Iowa-type game, which it very well could, I do think that Michigan is pretty well positioned. They have won the last 2 weeks against Maryland and Ohio State by doing what Iowa does, which is they have won the field position battle and they have won special teams. That resulted in safeties against Maryland. That resulted in long drives for no points for Ohio State last week. Michigan is well positioned to beat Iowa at what it does best. So if it can score early, if it can avoid those back-breaking mistakes that Iowa is so good at making opponents make, then I believe they can cruise to a comfortable victory in what is one of the largest spreads, if not the largest spread, in conference championship game history.
Yeah, I don't care what the spread says. I love watching Iowa games. It may be ugly, but it's always going to be entertaining. Alejandro and David, thanks so much. And for more coverage on the Big Ten Championship, be sure to check out Michigan Insider and Hawkeye Insider for all your Michigan and Iowa football and recruiting news all season long.